If Canadians are serious that every child matters, we should at least know the names of the missing Indian Residential School's children, about whom we hear almost daily in mainstream media reports. There are frequent reports of news conferences staged by Indigenous band leaders proclaiming new ground-penetrating radar (GPR) discoveries of unmarked graves at former residential schools. GPR detects soil disturbances, but it cannot confirm whether they are human remains or even graves. The reality is that the small number of excavations which have occurred have yielded no human remains, despite stories of clandestine burials told by Indigenous knowledge keepers. By contrast, in Winnipeg, excavations have been happening at landfills to search for the bodies of Indigenous women murdered by a serial killer. Yet after more than 4 years of gut-wrenching stories about the apple orchard at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School, not a single excavation has been carried out to confirm the alleged burial of more than 200 children. On May 27, 2021, the Kamloops Secwepemc First Nation announced that radar had revealed anomalies consistent with possible graves near the former school. Following that announcement, many First Nations made similar claims based on GPR. Yet no band, including Kamloops, has identified a single missing child by name. Kamloops alone has received $12 million in federal funding for excavation work, but no digging has taken place, and no explanation has been given for the delay. Are we serious? If murdered Indigenous women in Winnipeg matter enough to prompt landfill searches, why don't the children allegedly buried at Kamloops matter enough for an excavation? Sometimes it seems Canadians are far too willing to look away, even at the risk of being disingenuous. The Heather Stephenson government in Manitoba was defeated in the 2023 election, famously because it refused to search landfills for murdered Indigenous women. Yet the Kamloops allegation remains untested, despite being one of the gravest ever leveled in Canadian history, involving the alleged murder and burial of more than 200 children. In the meantime, copycat discoveries have spread across the country. The media has fanned a moral panic at home and abroad. Orange t-shirts have become a fixture, and schoolchildren are taught that allegations of murder, rape, mayhem, and mass graves are fact. Orange Shirt Day and the phrase "Every Child Matters" became national symbols of reconciliation after the Kamloops announcement, further entrenching the narrative. In Manitoba, Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, 2 Indigenous women murdered in Winnipeg, mattered. Their families and communities mattered. If First Nations in BC and elsewhere, and indeed all Canadians, truly believe every child matters, and if many still believe there are children buried at Kamloops, why are Canadians kept in the dark? Indigenous families in particular are being told and teaching their children that genocide explains the inequality, social, economic, and otherwise, they endure today. It's tempting to blame governments for fueling the panic or the mainstream media for refusing to ask basic questions. Yes, they bear responsibility. But the spark came from Kamloops, and only Kamloops can settle this. Its own GPR specialist recommended excavation. That would prove whether bodies exist, identify who the children were, and reconnect them to their families and communities. Instead, Canadians are asked to accept the story on faith. After 4 years with no excavation and no names, credibility is stretched to the breaking point. Consider the contrast. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says $18 million was spent to dig through thousands of tons of hazardous landfill to recover the remains of Morgan and Mercedes. Kamloops, with $12 million to dig just a few feet, has yet to act. Something is wrong with this picture. Either compassion for Indigenous children is missing, or the missing children aren't missing at all. Where is that compassion Canadians love to think they possess? Or is it simply not true that every child matters?